Welcome to Mosaic, an epic board game built around the first 5 books of the Bible. Our second game is called Names, where we'll explore the book of Exodus. The game is now set. Let's get started.
Here, right now, I'm experiencing deja vu. See, I already did this in my dream last night. I often dream before Sunday morning, and it did not go well. You see, before I took the stage, I had to use the washroom. And when I went into the washroom, it was full, which is very rare for the guys' washroom. And I had to say, excuse me, make my way. They let me through. I did my thing. I came back, so I'm a little late. I'm on the stage. I walk out. I don't have my notes or my Bible. And I'm like, great. So we had to take time to look for them. And then when I finally got them, I start, and the first slide comes up, except it's not there. And I realize I hadn't given the slides. So I take my phone, and I'm trying to get the slides up, but the Wi-Fi isn't working. And at that point, I called Bob Marsh up, and we walked to the pole here, and I turned my back, and I was saying, hey, can I take your teach next week? Because I can't do this. And we can't pull some songs. So anyways, then I woke up and I was like, great, it was just a dream, that's good. So the way this was supposed to start was like this. Hey everyone, my name's Brian Kauste. I'm part of the pastoral team here at the meeting place. Now, this January, I'll have been a father for 23 years, and that's something I had desired to be for so long. And during that time, I was also the family pastor for a number of years, working with the kids downstairs. And part of my job was to look for resources that would equip parents to be the spiritual nurturer for their kids. And it was really great because our kids were young then too, and my wife Tina and I wanted the same thing that I was looking for, and it just happened to be part of my job. And so one of the resources that I found talked about establishing family values. And so what they had done was they had taken their last name and made values. And I thought, that's really great. Like, let's incorporate this. So we took our last name, Kauste, and Tina and I sat down, and we crafted 6 values that would be important to us for our family. And so the first one was know we're for each other's good, apply God's word in our life, understand each other's strengths and weaknesses, serve our community, treat each other with love and respect, and enjoy each other's company weekly. And I just want to highlight the serve our community. That was a value to us. And so our kids are still all serving. My oldest, when he can, serves with youth. My middle guy serves with the 1-year-olds. He's been doing that for a long time. And Maya serves tech in the elementary area. And so these values we created because we wanted to instill in our kids what was important to us, things that we valued. And as we've been in this Mosaic series, I hope that you guys have been really digging in and learning all kinds of things. You know, I'm one of the teachers up here, but I've been learning so much as we go. And one of the things that I've been seeing is God showing himself as father to this nation, to these children of his, and he is wanting to instill values in them as well. In fact, the section that we're in Exodus is all about that. He's creating, he wants to show them what a healthy community looks like. And he wants to give them a sense of identity of who they are, set apart from the other nations. He wanted them to be a holy people. And so let's just review quickly where we've been. If you've seen the little game in the foyer that we've created, here's the 12 tribes of Israel. Now, these are the little pieces that we have. They have left Egypt. They have become freed. We talked about that. They crossed the Red Sea. They're in the desert now. Moses is leading them. God chose Moses for this amazing task. They've kind of made some interesting choices along the way, and now, as Nasser talked about, they are at Mount Sinai. If you go to the next slide, this is the overview of our game with Mount Sinai, and I love that we put a question mark there in front of it because they had choices to make, and we're going to be talking about that today. The whole idea of responding to God is pretty important to what we're talking about. How would they respond? Well, we'll see. So they missed a few opportunities along the way, which Nasser talked about last week, and that would continue to be a bit of a pattern as we move forward in their wilderness adventure. And so here's a couple of thoughts I had reading this section. We are talking about Exodus chapter 21 to 24, and we're not going to cover the whole thing. When I said yes to this date, I didn't really know what the topic was. And then if you are utilizing the journal or utilizing the devotional that's come with this, that's great. We would strongly encourage you to utilize these resources, because to come Sunday morning having read the passage already, I think that's a huge gift. Having, had your own thoughts around that, that's a pretty cool thing. And so when I saw the topic, it said judgments. I'm like, oh, what have I gotten myself into? Because that word judgments is kind of negative, and it certainly has negative connotations to me. I grew up in a Christian home, and I loved God at an early age. I believed in God, but I had this impression of God, that he was this judge up there who was kind of just watching me, which is comforting on the one hand, but on the other hand, I thought he was watching to see if I was going to mess up. So I tried super hard to be good always and to do the right thing always, but I would always fall short. And I would just think, okay, God is up there and he's going to get me. He's going to get me. That was then, this is now. I have a much healthier understanding of who God is. And so when I saw this judgment word, I thought, this isn't the mindset to have when we're looking at God in this section. God isn't about punishing the Israelites here. He's giving them these words for justice, but for restorative justice. God is always about restoration, about redemption, and we see that throughout his entire word. We have to remember that the scriptures were written not to us, they were written for us. They were written to a specific people during a specific time. And during this time in the wilderness, we shouldn't be seeing God as a dictator. We should see him as a loving father who is trying to instill things to his people. He's trying to communicate who he is. Again, they've been in exile for so many years, they had kind of lost the plot. And so God needed to instill in them his values. He wanted them to care about the things that he cares about. And so that's very key in reading this, because if it matters to God, it should matter to us. That's important. Why don't you say that with me? If it matters to God, it should matter to us. If it matters to God, it should matter to us. And we're going to get into that. And so we need to look at these words and find the ones that fit our context, because not all of them do. One thing I noticed is there's many I will statements when you read this section. And I love the fact that this is a series, that it just kind of continues each week. And us as teachers, we get to hear the person who was before, the people who were before. And 2 weeks ago, Bob was up here teaching, and a verse that he had up here from Exodus 15, verse 26, really stood out to me. And it said, "If you will listen to the voice of the Lord your God, and do what is right in his eyes, and give ear to his commandments, and keep his statutes, I will put none of the diseases on you that I put on the Egyptians, for I am the Lord your healer." And those statements, those "if you, I will" statements continue significantly in these passages that we're looking at today. In fact, I could be wrong, I double-checked. I counted 14 "I will" statements. This is God communicating who he is to his people. And so this slide here gives you an overview of these chapters, and we're not going to talk about of all of them. Can we get the next slide up? It just gives a breakdown. Oh, that's not the one. Let me see here. Oh, I jumped. Okay, that's okay. Here's the overview. Yeah, this gives you an overview of what these verses are. We're not going to get into all of them, but we are going to get into a couple of them that gives us an idea of some things that matter to God that should matter to us today. It mattered to the people back then. He wanted them to matter, and the same applies for us today. So, chapter 23 can be broken up into a couple of sections, 3 of them to be exact. There's words on honesty and justice, there's words on Sabbath and feasts, and there's words on protection and warning. And so, it starts, the honesty section starts with this in chapter 23. "You shall not spread a false report. You shall not join hands with a wicked man to be a malicious witness. You shall not fall in with the many who do evil, nor shall you bear witness in a lawsuit, siding with the many so as to pervert justice, nor shall you be partial to a poor man in his lawsuit. This is about honesty. This is about integrity. And when he was talking to the community of people, again, he was giving them his ideal of how they should communicate with each other, how they should restore each other's characters and reputations when they were having these challenges with each other. And then he goes on in verse 9, and he talks about justice. And so it says in this translation, "You shall not oppress a sojourner. You know the heart of a sojourner, for you were sojourners in the land of Egypt." Now, sojourner is, I don't know, I find it a little tricky to say. It's not necessarily a word that we often use, but it translates as a stranger or an alien or a foreigner. And he actually mentions these exact words a chapter before in chapter 22, verse 21. It says, "You shall not wrong a sojourner or oppress him, for you were sojourners in the land of Egypt." And so two things are happening here. He's saying, don't oppress people who are different from you. Don't oppress people who are different from you, the strangers, the aliens, the outsiders. Don't oppress them. And remember that you too were sojourners, were foreigners in the land of Egypt. God is about remembrance, remembering where you came from. Remembering where you came from, remembering your deliverance, so that you can have this word. The word is empathy. And the definition of empathy is this: the ability or practice of imagining or trying to deeply understand what someone else is feeling or what it's like to be in their situation. Empathy. And we live in a world today where we could use a whole lot more empathy, because it seems like differences, when we experience differences of cultures, differences of values, differences of opinions, of beliefs, of faith, there's more dissension and infighting and challenges. Empathy is just trying to get a better understanding of other people's experiences. And this whole word sojourner is interesting to me as well, because as a Christ follower, for those of us who are, we know that this life here on earth is temporary. And the reason why the word sojourner is unique to maybe some of those other definitions is it implies the temporary nature of staying in a place. And so as Christ followers, we are here temporarily. We have hope for the future, to live in the future kingdom with God. And so how are we going to navigate our time, our temporary time here on earth? I have 2 t-shirts, and if I wear either of these shirts, I will always get a response from random people. It's true. The first one is my Goonies shirt, and that's completely irrelevant right now. But the second one is this shirt, and this is the back of the shirt. And on the back of it, it says, "Be kind, be empathetic, be courageous, be generous, be human." And the words "be human" are on the front of the shirt as well. I bought that t-shirt at a family ministries conference that a few of us went to many years ago. I thought "be human" was the theme, and I loved that shirt. And whenever I wear that shirt, guaranteed somebody will say something about it. In fact, somebody, I think it's happened twice, asked if they could take a picture of my back, because those words resonated. And these words are so near to who God is and what he wants us to be. He created us in his image as humans. So to be kind, it's one of the fruit of the Spirit. But to be empathetic, that's what he's talking about here when it comes to people who are different than us. And that's a pretty big thing. The second section that we get to talks about Sabbath and feasts. And there's things here that certainly apply to us as well. In chapter 23, verse 10, we read, "For 6 years you shall sow your land and gather in its yield. But the 7th year you shall let it rest and lie fallow, that the poor of your people may eat, and what they leave the beasts of the field may eat. You shall do likewise with your vineyard and with your orchard. 6 days you shall do your work, but on the 7th day you shall rest, that your ox and your donkey may have rest, and the son of your servant woman and the alien may be refreshed." So, Sabbath is really important to God. And this goes back to Genesis with the creation account. 6 days, and the seventh day God rested. If God himself rests, it certainly matters to him. It should matter to us. And when we get into the New Testament in the Gospels, we see time and again Jesus giving the examples of taking time to rest, to be restored, to be refreshed. And in that rest, there's provision for those who are poor. There's also care for animals. You see, this section is so much about God's provision to his children, to his people, and our response. And if it matters to God, it should matter to us. So yes, this Exodus thing, this is not our context, but Sabbath, that matters to God, so it should matter to us. How are we doing with that? We live in a very, very busy, nonstop world. It seems to get busier and busier and busier. But yet people are getting lonelier and lonelier and lonelier. That's pretty telling. It matters to God. It should matter to us. And then he talks about feasts. And sometimes we think, oh yeah, God, he's kind of boring. But no, God wants his people to get together, to remember and to celebrate, to have feasts, to have festivals, to enjoy each other's company. And so he mentions 3 of them here: the Feast of the Unleavened Bread, Feast of Harvest, the Feast of Ingathering. And so the takeaway for us there is, while we might not celebrate those things, God wants us to take time and be together and celebrate. Yes, he wants us to work and do, the hard things, but also to enjoy the creation that he has given to us. And so that's really important. And then we get to the third section. We're not going to talk on it too much, protection and warning. I'm just going to read the first verse. If you haven't read this yet, this is maybe a teaser where you can take it and maybe sit with your small group with it, or, whatever, and talk about it. Verse 20 says, now that he said all this, he says, "Behold, I send an angel before you to guard you on the way and to bring you to the place that I have prepared. Pay careful attention to him and obey his voice. Do not rebel against him, for he will not pardon your transgression." And here's the kicker: "For my name is in him." For my name is in him. This doesn't sound like it's an ordinary angel, if there is such a thing, but this is a very unique angel whose name is in him. So think on that one for a little bit as you continue to read that passage. But we're going to jump to the end of it. He's talked about the protection that they're going to get. He talked about the warnings, which is right here in verse 32. It says, "You shall make no covenant with them," these are with the people of the land that they are going into, "or with their gods. They shall not dwell in your land, lest they make you sin against me. For if you serve their gods, it will surely be a snare to you." And this points to the very first commandment. "I am the Lord your God. Put no other gods before me." The very, very first commandment. And he's saying, do not make gods of other things with other people. I should be your number one. Again, God is establishing his people, and he's establishing his character, and he's moving into covenant. And so, how would the people respond? Well, there's a series that has come out on YouTube. They're little half-an-hour episodes called The Promised Land. Maybe you've seen it before. But it is this story in the style of The Office, and I thought we'd just watch a 2-minute clip because it's right about this spot, and we will see how they responded.
As you can see, I've already spoken to the Lord today. I went up on the mountain and he gave me instructions for the people.
The word from the Lord. I am the Lord your God, who brought you out of Egypt. Do not have other gods besides me. Do not make an idol for yourself. Do not misuse the name of the Lord. Do not murder. Do not commit
There are a lot of new rules. I remember the first 10 pretty well. But some of those laws about crops and property are a little hazy.
When a man uncovers a pit or digs a pit and does not cover it, and an ox or a donkey falls into it, The owner of the pit must pay compensation.
Should we be writing
and
this
is
down?
The new owner.
Yes, there are a lot of new laws, and the Lord says there's even more to come. I love rules. They just make things so clear. There is at least one rule that's repeated over and over, so I'm sure it'll be the easiest to follow.
You shall not make gods of silver to rival me, nor shall you make gods of gold. This is the blood of the covenant the Lord has made with you concerning all these words.
Keep it going for Moses. Whew, thank you, Moses, for those words from the Lord. Now I think it's time for a little crowd participation. Repeat after me. All that the Lord has spoken, we will do. I'm sorry, am I in the presence of Egyptian slaves? Or am I in the presence of free people? Now let me hear it with some feeling.
All that the Lord has spoken, we will do.
That's what I'm talking about.
That's what I'm talking about. So you know what? I don't know what that would have been like there, but it just reminds me that like these are people. These are regular people like you and like me. Years later, here we are. How will we respond to all that God has in his word? And so then we get to chapter 24, and it's about covenant. It's about covenant. The whole thing, their whole time in the desert was about covenant. It was a training ground or a classroom for God to teach his people who he wants them to be. And this covenant started, way early on. In Genesis, we talked about Abraham, and God was going to use Abraham to restore his blessings to all the nations through Abraham's family. And so now we have Moses, and God wants to establish a covenant to make his people a kingdom of priests. Now, Nasser had mentioned the kingdom of priests last week, and that didn't really go quite the way it was supposed to go. And I was on the Q&R phone, and there was a question that came in we didn't ask, but it was saying, well, what would the kingdom of priests be like? And the kingdom of priests would be basically, the Israelites would be God's representation to the world. They would be a royal priesthood, a kingdom of priests representing God to the entire nations. And so the covenant was going to be made. And on June 7th, 1997, right here, right on this very spot, a covenant was made. I know because I was there. A covenant was made, and Tina and I got married, and right over here we walked over, and we signed, to make it official, we signed the documents, and we were legally married, and we established our covenant. Now, we're going to celebrate 28 years next year. And for those of you who are married, it's great, but it's not always easy. And for those of you who are not married, you live life, and life is great, but it's not always easy. But we established this covenant, and we intend to keep this covenant, even though there have been times where it's been like this, which is life. And so Nasser last week had talked about this whole covenant thing with God and his people. You can go on to the next picture, or just leave it at that. That's good. This whole covenant was like a marriage. And that really resonated with me as I was sitting listening to Nasser, and that's why I showed the picture, because I thought, yeah, like that makes a lot of sense. And the 10 Commandments were the vows for the people, and we saw in the video that they said, yes, we will honor this covenant, but the wedding didn't quite go off the way that it wanted to, or it was supposed to, Nasser said. The people were scared, they didn't want to go up to the mountain to see God, so they missed out. But the covenant was made. And so covenant matters to God, and if covenant matters to God, it should matter to us. And so this Mosaic covenant that took place, that's where we came up with this name for this entire series. We're talking about the Torah, the first 5 books of the Bible, and we're doing it for the entire year. So how do you kind of house that into something, that we can utilize? And so we took the word Mosaic, changed the name to make it a little bit more interesting, but that's this Mosaic covenant between God and his people. And so just to read it straight from Scripture, in chapter 24, verses 3, this is what the people said. We saw it in the video. Moses came up and told the people all the words of the Lord and the rules, and all the people answered with one voice and said, all the words that the Lord has spoken, we will do. And then again, in verse 7, they say the same thing, but there's a little bonus. It says, then he took the book of the covenant and read it in the hearing of the people. And they said, all that the Lord has spoken, we will do, and we will be obedient. We will be obedient. So this is going to go really well. They said they would do it, right? You know, we always do the things that we say we're going to do, don't we? We're people just like them. And so the band is going to come up, and I'm just going to read the tail end of chapter 24. It's kind of like Moses riding off to the sunset, but it's not the end of the story, not by far. It says at verse 15, then Moses went up on the mountain, and the cloud covered the mountain. The glory of the Lord dwelt on Mount Sinai, and the cloud covered it 6 days. And on the seventh day, there's that whole 6-7 thing. I know that's an interesting number these days. On the seventh day, he called Moses out of the midst of the cloud. Now the appearance of the glory of the Lord was like a devouring fire on the top of the mountain in sight of the people of Israel. They saw all of this. Moses entered the cloud and went up on the mountain, and Moses was on the mountain, and here's again, numbers in the Bible, 40 days and 40 nights. This is the word of the Lord. So, what do we do with this? What do we do with this section of Scripture? Well, I'm so grateful that we've started something a little bit different here for the last couple of weeks at the meeting place. We're going to be going into a time of sung worship, but we also want to go into a time of prayer. Because we, as a people, are in need of prayer. We are in need of prayer at many different times. And I love that we're giving space for this. You know, when I was young, I thought that the Old, and when I say young, I'm talking like in my 30s at this point, I thought the Old Testament was irrelevant. So I didn't really spend a lot of time in it. But then somebody from our church gave me a book on how to read the Bible chronologically, and that really clicked it for me that I'm like, oh, okay, this is making more sense, and maybe there's more to this. Because I thought the Israelites were foolish. Like, how in the world could they turn their back on God when they saw all these signs and wonders, all these amazing things? But then as I got into it, I kind of thought, well, how could they? How could I? Because more and more, I see myself as one of the Israelites. My heart is like, yes, God, I want to be obedient. I'm going to follow your covenants. But then I make choices that are away from what he would want. I turn my back. And that's who we are as humans. We have fallen short of God's glory. And when we talk about values, like, ask yourself, what's relevant to you? What do you value? You know, in stores you see these plaques, faith, family, friends, and that's great. Like, those are great things to value. I value them. But if we value things, we need to take time to go, okay, so how am I doing with the things that I value? Faith. I value my faith. How am I growing in my faith? Am I actually taking steps forward? Am I being intentional? Or am I just sitting back? Family. Oh, I value my family. Okay. So think about it. Are there any broken relationships in your family? And I'm not saying it's easy to repair, because there are circumstances and situations that are difficult. But when is the last time you thought, what can I do to take a step forward to reconciliation if I really value family? And the same applies for friends. Friends are a gift from God. And if I value my friendships, am I actually taking time for them? Am I actually, I feel the nudge to do that coffee, but you know what, I don't feel like going out. How are we doing? And if any of those three areas, faith, family, friends, if that's a challenge spot for you, well, come for prayer. Have somebody pray about those things with you. We talked about empathy. We talked about rest. We talked about celebration. People who are different, if you value empathy, or even if you don't, maybe that's a growth area for you. Maybe you're so busy that you actually aren't taking time for rest, and you're digging yourself deeper and deeper, but you, for whatever reason, can't pencil in time for rest or celebration, taking time to enjoy the things that God has given to us. If you see yourself in any of those areas, if they're growth areas, come for prayer. Let somebody pray over you. Let somebody encourage you in that way. We also talked about this word sojourner. And you know, as a Christ follower, I look at the news, I look around, and sometimes it can be just so depressing. And the word weary, I don't think I've used that word as much as I have in the last 2 years. Like, I'm not weary all the time, but in the last 2 years, I have felt a weariness like I haven't felt before. And with a group this size, I'm guessing some of you are in that space too. It can be hard. Come for prayer, be encouraged. And so, the band is going to lead us in worship. There'll be a few people around the room. I'll make myself available here. But come for prayer, because prayer matters to God.
All right, Brian, a lot of questions have come in.
Great.
I don't know how I should feel about appearing in your dream, but we'll talk about that another time.
It wasn't the first time. We'll just say that.
All right. Many of us have such a strong reaction to the rules of our Christian faith. We much prefer language like relationship. Can you help us understand the way rules and relationship interact?
Rules and relationships. Yeah, I mean, we're all different that way when it comes to rules, because some of us are rule followers and others like to push at the edges all the time. But again, I think with that, the lens that I've been viewing a lot of this is as a father to his child. And so, as kids are, when we're raising kids very young, we have to really enforce certain rules, even for their own physical safety, right? Their physical safety first. And then as they get older, there's different things we want to enforce for, and even using that word enforce is kind of like, ugh, but we want to have guidelines and boundaries for them to keep them safe spiritually, physically, mentally, emotionally, sexually, all of these things. And so it really is, if you have a healthy relationship with your kids, and I realize that there's no perfect parent, and maybe I should come off the parenting thing a little bit, but relationship, the relationship to, if you really love and care for somebody, you do want to have boundaries and guidelines. So even if you're not a parent, and even in friendships, you should have some boundaries and guidelines, and have that established out of love for that person. It comes down to love, and that's the love of the Father. These things are they're there for a reason. But we as people, again, right at the beginning in Genesis, we want to go astray. And that's why I love the imagery of Jesus as a shepherd, gently, bringing the sheep back in. So I think we've been, when it comes to rules and relationships, I think that's been tainted a lot. Maybe that's the word I'll use. So we have had these negative experiences of that. That's, yeah.
Thank you. I think you've said that well. I think it just illustrates the complexity of that, but the fact that rules are actually part of what makes a relationship what it is. So.
Yeah.
All right, right down to basics here. What should we be doing on our Sabbath?
Well, what should we be doing on our Sabbath? That's a good question. That's a very good question. And so I would say whoever asked the question, sit with that for a while, because it doesn't mean do nothing. It doesn't mean, you're just going to sit then and have nothing on, you're not going to watch it. I don't know. But I think the Sabbath is to take a break from the everyday, from the rhythms and routines of every day. So for me, my Sabbath is, it's kind of half and half. Saturdays, definitely Saturday mornings and stuff. I love Saturday mornings very much. We make sure we have nothing on the schedule. And then Mondays as well is a bit of a Sabbath for Tina and I. We always get groceries Monday morning, okay? So, but that's when we do it. So that is, it's work. We need to do it, but we're doing it together. We are, being together. And I just think there's a lot of things that you can do. There's no, specific rules for that. But just take time away from what you normally do. And if you need rest, actual physical rest, then just do nothing. We're not people who like to do nothing. The majority of us, I would think, because So you have a Sabbath on Monday.
I do. It's true. Yeah.
Yeah. So.
Yeah. Thank you for your definition. My definition for Sabbath is that I don't try to meet anyone else's expectations other than God's.
Oh,
and that just
see, that's why
gives me
he's
a
the
little bit.
lead pastor. Because that's really good. Yeah.
It might just be age. I'm not sure.
No, it's really
Okay.
good, I think.
So here we go. Here's a question that ties into a theme that was introduced last week and that you referenced today. So the question is, if everyone is a high priest or high priestess, nobody would have power higher than another. If that was the case, then nothing would truly change. How would there be a difference made other than giving the people more power? So maybe it's returning to like understanding like the function, the purpose of this priesthood that you referenced.
Back then? Like if that happened? I'm not really sure. Everybody would have the same power. I don't know. Oh yeah, this is where.
If I can I'll encourage you to turn to your teaching this morning. You made a comment about this. What's the function?
If everybody,
what's
if
the
everybody
function of the
was,
priesthood?
that's interesting. Well, again, Nasser touched on it that if it went the way it was supposed to go, they were supposed to be the priesthood was supposed to tell, be the example of God to the rest of the nations who were, had other gods that weren't the one true God. And so they were living out how God wanted them to live. Again, with the covenant, with the rules, with the set apartness. I please don't quote me on any of this, but I would imagine that their job would be just to live that out like 100% in the way that God had wanted them to do. So they're all just living out that way and being the example to other nations where they would see, oh, there's something different about these Israelites.
Yeah.
Which is how we should be as Christ followers. Like people should look at our life and go, there's something different about that person. There's a big challenge in that.
Yeah, I think that's said really well because it actually illustrates, even in the Old Testament, we sometimes misread and think that God was only focused on the Israelites and didn't care about the other nations. No, he actually made provisions for all people because he loves all people because he's created all of them. So well said. Okay. Brian, will you close the service with us?
Yes, I will. So I started the service or the talk, my dream, not that, but telling you about the family values. Yeah, the dream didn't come true. Yay. Family values. And so my two oldest are adults now. Well, the second one will be an adult in 2 weeks officially. And so they're adults. They can choose whether they want to value these things or not as they move forward. And we as parents certainly hope that they will, choose to follow some of them, but they have a choice. And that's the thing of life. God has given us free will. We can choose whether we want the things that he cares about. We can choose whether we want to care about them as well. And so that's something that, that's certainly something to think about, something to chew on this week. The things that God cares about should matter to us. If it matters to God, it should matter to us. So as you go into this week, live out the things that matter to God. And I also want to just say, too, as we end, there'll still be some people here for prayer. If you were sitting there going, I really should, but then you didn't, just come. Just come have somebody pray for you because, man, we carry burdens sometimes in quiet and in silence. And we need to release those because that's what God would want for us. So have a great week. May God bless and keep you well.